Hello there, everyone. It is Sunday, May the 1st, year 2022. And as we do a lot of weekends, we have another special guest with us today. And today we have one of your favorite fans, not fans, I'm sorry, you're fans of this guest that we have right now. And I'll turn it over to him for the moment. We have Millennial Mike with us. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Mark, how's it going? Thanks for having me on the channel. Today, we wanted to talk about a housing market slowdown. Does that necessarily equate to a housing market crash? A lot of people are hoping that it does because they're desperately have been sitting on the sidelines, hoping that maybe there'll be some return to normalcy and they would maybe have a potential to buy themselves a house. But what Mark and I are going to talk about is some of the things that are contributing to the housing market slowdown, but why that still probably is not going to translate over to a housing market crash. So the first thing I want Mark to talk about, and this is something that he and I are both feeling the squeeze on, feeling a bit of pain from, and that's rising interest rates. So Mark, how does a rising interest rates relate to a housing market slowdown?
Sure. Well, with rising interest rates, for anyone who's looking to buy a home to live in, if they were looking 6 months ago or a year ago, maybe their rate was at 3% or 3.25%. And now rates might be 5.25%, somewhere around there. That's just for homeowner. If you're an investor, maybe we're getting 4% a year ago, and now we're getting 6% or 7%, whatever it might be. So as rates go up, the amount that the average person our mortgage payments will go up because we're going to have higher interest payments. And depends on the rate. If rates go up 1%, depends on the dollar amount of the house you're buying. But the mortgage payment may go up $100, $150, $200. And for a lot of home buyers, especially first-time home buyers, but also folks who are just trying to move up from their starter home to another home, they know what they want and they know how much they can pay. And it's right down to the dollar of what they can afford. And if rates go up 1.5%, it bumps the payment up enough that maybe they can't afford to buy it. Combined with where I'm at locally, it's been a construction boom going on, but houses are taking longer than ever to build. And they're starting to see in the area I'm in Florida is that folks are under contract to buy a house that they're building it. And now as the house is getting completed, they're not qualifying because now the interest rate is that much higher and the bank is disqualifying them for the mortgage. And that leaves the buyer kind of stuck.
Right.
The builder kind of stuck then,
Right. So interest rates, the frustrating thing about them is everybody's going to work off of it. The new builders, the new buyers, and the investor, we're all concerned with what interest rates are doing. And really, like Mark said, the reason is because that's going to affect either holding costs or cash flow. As an investor, you're sitting there looking at your cash flow. When you want a property to cash flow $300 a month, but all of a sudden interest rates have jumped from 3 to 6% or 4 to 7%. That could be $100 or $200 a month extra payment on a $100,000 property. On a $500, $600, $700,000 piece of real estate like Mark has in Florida or I have up here in Seattle, that could be $300 or $400 of additional payment, which means that the home buyer is now qualified to purchase less of a house. So you would think what most people would say to themselves would be, well, prices will have to come down. They'll have to crash. They'll have to fall in order to be attainable for all of the demand or whatever demand is left over and what that demand has the ability to buy. And we're going to get to how that's not necessarily going to be the case next. But real quick, let's talk about one other issue. Rising interest rates are really affecting people, but there's also a lot of uncertainty with the Fed and the fact that we're in a midterm election year. What happens if one party gets outed and another party comes in? What are they going to do? And what is the Fed going to do moving forward? So Mark, tell us, you don't have to give us what your predictions of what's going to happen, but just explain to us how that impacts the market.
Sure. Well, right now, if you only think about the potential of rates going up, because the Fed has said they are raising rates, it's going to happen. It's not like we might do it. They are going to do it. That makes the market shaky. When I say the market, it's kind of like the stock market. It gets shaky and it starts dropping. Like in regards to the stock market, I think I saw where the last month was the largest drop in a whole bunch of years, just because of, and it's all because of the Fed is saying they're going to raise rates. All right. So when that happens, that scares folks too. Maybe it's that first time home buyer and they used to have a 401k worth $500,000. So they felt rich. And now their $500,000 in their 401k has dropped down to $300,000. And they don't feel rich any longer. They're kind of like, uh-oh, they start panicking. And that makes them scared. All right. And there was a second part to this. Remind me of that second part.
So it was just not only what the Fed's going to do, but how does like a midterm election, I mean, because there's, at least it seems to be that there's quite a deal of certainty that one party is going to get outed. That's not always the case in a midterm election, but there could be a total flop of the direction we're moving as a country because of this.
Right. That's the thing, because as much as I hate talking about politics, as much as I hate following politics at all, society gets ruffled if they don't like what one party is doing. Half of the population wants to switch to the other party. And it doesn't matter which party's in office. It's always roughly half. But then you have midterm elections. If Congress, the Senate, or the House loses seats, one party loses seats and the other one gains, that can affect major policy issues. Mm-hmm. Exactly what those issues are, we won't get into, but it causes uncertainty, not just for investors, but just in society as a whole. People get a little more on edge. It's a combination, the political mess, let's say, gets someone edge. Maybe they are that first time home buyer, and now they're 25 years old, they're 27 years old, and they're thinking, I finally almost got my down payment saved up, but now I can't afford it because rates are going up. And it frustrates people, it gets them on edge, and so on and so on. But anyway, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I really think that politics, unfortunately, as much as I hate to talk about it as well, it does play a role. Most people do still see one party as more favorable towards business and more favorable towards rich people or wealthy people. And the other party is seen as less favorable towards business, more likely to forgive student loans. Look at what happened when we printed $6 trillion just to, try to get us through the pandemic. Well, what happens if we start to forgive trillions of dollars in student loan debt? I mean, essentially, we'd be doing the same thing. We're just giving out a stimulus. It's just indirect stimulus, and it's being given out to pay off loans. Now, I'm not saying I'm for or against it, but it will have an impact on the economy. And we saw what the last impact was, and that's inflation at rates that we've never seen since the 1970s. It's 50 years since we've had inflation this high from printing that money. So if one party is making that their issue to run on, and then that's what they do, there's going to be impacts from it. So yes, uncertainty with interest rates, uncertainty with the Fed, uncertainty in the political atmosphere. It's complex. That being said, there's a lot of things that should translate over to housing prices falling, a housing slowdown, right? But it seems to me, I think Mark agrees with me, that we're probably not going to see any type of crash. We're going to explain why. And that's because supply and demand is undefeated. Supply and demand rules the roost. It's the king of the castle. Even though, and let me share a stat with you real quick. Zillow does predict that we are going to get back to a somewhat normal amount of supply on the market. But let me explain to you where we're at right now. In 2018 and 2019, the monthly average for houses on the market nationwide was 1.6 million. But in 2021, the last year, full year we have stats for, it was 1 million. It's a 600,000 houses, fewer houses a month on the market. So when supply comes so far down while demand stays constant, or because the last couple of years we had such low interest rates, demand went up, we're not going to see prices ever fall, right? That's why we've had such crazy appreciation. And so even if supply starts to come back up, is it going to return to the earlier levels? And if it does, is what's going to happen to our demand? So one of the things we just covered was demand with the rising interest rates. But I want Mark to give us his thoughts on why he thinks that we're not necessarily going to see a crash in housing prices.
Sure. Because as you said, the drop from 2018 of 1.6 million houses on the market per month down to 1 million, a $600,000 drop in fewer houses. Combine that with the construction of new construction. it has slowed down because of the supply chain issues. Houses are taking longer to build. Just where I'm at, this is just one city in the country. There are builders that are saying they're putting things on the back burner. They're not building some houses at times because it's like, it's too much. It takes too long to build it. It takes too long to get the materials in. And we're losing our buyers because they qualify today, but when the house is completed 18 months from now, they no longer qualify. Okay. So we have a combination, fewer houses on the market, fewer houses being built. There's just not enough houses. But the demand is still there. Even with rates going up, people still want to buy houses. But when you don't have, it's like when you go to the store, if there's and I'll put it in layman's terms, I'll try to. If you go to the store and you want to buy a coffee cup, and normally coffee cups are $1 because they're plentiful, they're making them, they're plentiful. But all of a sudden there's a shortage on coffee cups, but everyone still wants their coffee cup. So when you go to the store, now it's $2, it's doubled in price. But then people start wanting it. People might start fighting over it. It jumps to $3, $4, $5. And that's for something little like a coffee cup. But that's happening on the bigger scale to the price of lumber, to windows, to doors, to shingles. You know, I looked at a few houses yesterday, and 2 different houses, one needed a roof, one, the seller is going to put a roof on it. But I was told the seller who's going to put the roof on, put it in writing, they will pay for it no matter how long it takes to get the shingles in. So if it's 6 months from now or a year from now, they're still going to pay for the roof because it's unknown how long it's going to take. So prices are going up. The demand is still strong because you have investors who are also buying houses. Because look around at all the YouTube channels of real estate investors trying to tell everyone, buy rental houses, buy rental houses, buy rental houses. Every time investors buy rental houses, that does take houses off the market. Correct?
That's correct. And not just investors. So the average homeowner not only has to compete against investors like you and me, they also have to compete against bigger companies like BlackRock. They also have to compete with foreign investors. The United States allows people to buy property here, even if they're not American citizens. I just interviewed a guy who's from London who owns a couple properties in Gary, like us, and that video will be up on my channel soon. But Canada just recently banned all foreign investors. Well, guess what market those folks are going to be looking at next to invest their money? Probably the United States, because it's a very stable investment. And it's shown to go up over time. And if you live in a country like China where the government could seize your assets, the US is a lot safer place to park your money. So yeah, the average investor has to compete, or excuse me, the average homeowner has to compete against a lot of people for houses.
Right. Very true. Very true. And just what I'm seeing in my area I live in, South Florida, there are a lot of foreign investors that have bought houses here, and they're kind of like they're snowbirds. And most of them are European countries. Some of them are Asian countries, but they'll come over for 3 months, 4 months in the wintertime, and their house just stays empty the rest of the time. And that's just how it is. So, but with that being said, there's always a demand. You're a millennial, and your age range is the prime age range to be buying a house. If someone say is 28 years old and they've never bought their house, they really want to get one, it's time for them to buy one. But then they're dealing with higher interest rates, they're dealing with higher prices. And even if prices, we think they're going to drop because YouTube says we're going to have a crash, as long as we have demand, prices aren't going to drop. They may stabilize a bit because some places like the market I'm in now, it's been completely crazy. My house I'm in has doubled in value in 1 year. That's not normal.
Yeah, and that's not healthy.
It's not healthy. But from every real estate agent I talk to, they all tell me the same thing. They don't expect my house to drop in value. It might not keep going up, but the new normal is going to be what used to be a $500,000 house is now $1 million house. It's just how it is.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, so to kind of finish off our conversation here, Yes, there's a lot of things that are affecting the housing market that you would traditionally think would probably affect prices and cause some sort of downward momentum, or a slowdown, right? A slowdown. And really the only slowdown is probably going to be in transactions. It's not going to be a slowdown and maybe a slowdown in appreciation. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to still continue to appreciate, because supply and demand is undefeated. Supply is still extremely low unless it gets back to earlier norms, which even if it still does, if demand is increasing because we're bringing in more foreign investors, or there's uncertainty in the stock market, so more people switch over to real estate, or people are afraid they're going to miss out on an opportunity because of different political party, there's so much going on. I do not forecast that we are going to see a housing market crash. I know some people are saying local market may crash here or there. I guess it's probably possible. Some markets may take more of a hit than others, but I don't think we're going to see a national housing market crash. I think what's going to happen is there's going to be maybe a small softening of some prices in certain markets. Most markets will continue to appreciate. It's going to be harder for the homeowner to buy. There's going to be a crash in first-time homeowner purchases, if there's going to be any crash at all. That's my final thoughts. Mark, what you got?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. But since this channel is more lean towards investors, and if anyone out there is watching this and you're a real estate investor, maybe you haven't bought your first rental, or maybe you're bought one but you're trying to buy another one, I think from my perspective, it may become a better market for us investors, because houses won't sell. They won't command as, you won't have this as an example. You won't have a house go on the market and have 25 offers be made on it in the first 24 hours. That will slow down. But when you have a house that's dirty, I was in a house yesterday that was dirty. It was empty. The real estate agent didn't even sweep it. It was trash. And it's like, what are they doing? And I know, I talked to that real estate agent, and I know what her mindset was. People are going to buy it just like it is. They're going to pay a higher price just like it is. But as the market keeps changing for us investors, that house that is beat up, that 6 months ago they were going to ask 20K higher and get it, we might be able to come in and offer 10K less, 20K less, and we may create a deal for ourselves.
I think there will be some more opportunity for investors. I think it's going to get harder for the homeowner. Even the brand new investor, it's going to be a little bit trickier for, but more seasoned and experienced investors will probably going to start to realize there are some hidden opportunities out there that we'll be able to take advantage of. So I'm optimistic, although I am still frustrated because I don't like to see opportunity taken away from first-time homeowners and just your average person out there, because the number one key to building wealth in our country is to get on the property ladder at some point. So I think it's important to make sure that that first rung on the property ladder stays attainable for most people. The final thoughts, Mark, what you got?
I agree, Mike. I agree. I was in a couple houses yesterday, and one of the realtors told me a story about a house that she had listed recently that got something like 17 offers. Some offers were above asking price, but the seller asked the realtor, out of the folks buying it, are any of those folks a first-time home buyer? And she said, yes, there's one young couple. They're frustrated because they've put like 15 offers in and haven't gotten anything, but their offer is lower than the other offer. They can't afford to offer more than the list price. And the seller said, I accept their offer. I'm selling to them, because whoever that seller is, I don't know them. Maybe they're an investor who's wealthy. Maybe they just have a soft spot for a young couple, but that seller is agreeing to take less money to give the house to a first-time home buyer. Now, with that being said, that's just a story to tell, but that's not going to happen very frequently because people always want top dollar.
Right.
So, but anyway, all right. So we've talked on this subject quite a bit. I think we've covered a lot. Hopefully everyone's gotten something out of this. And as always, feel free to comment below if you have any comments. And Mike, I do appreciate you showing up here, and have yourself a great day, Mike. And let me hear you say goodbye in a different language.
Ciao. Adios.
There you go.
That's all I got, man. Put me on the spot like that.
I'm just playing with you. All right. Sounds good to me. Well, adios, everyone. Thanks for watching. So Millennial Mike, Mazske Finance, we are signing out. So stay safe and do start investing.